Dennis Tufano is the original lead singer of the Buckinghams. You know what I'm talking about, people. Kind of a drag, don't you care? Mercy, mercy, mercy. Hey, baby, they're playing our song. And Susan, a song my wife makes me sing to her every night. And more, making them one of the top-selling acts of 1967. Think about the competition back then. That was a feat. Their timeless music lives on as Dennis Tufano takes the hits and combines that with the music of a legendary vocalist that we'll talk about later to venues across the country and around the world. Please welcome to the Marc Berman Show, a guy who really knows how to sing a hook, Dennis Tufano. Dennis, welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Marc. It's great to be on.
Okay, before we get into the music, let's find out about you. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in the northwest side of Chicago, a little area called Logan Square. And, yeah.
So back then in Chicago, as a kid, who were your radio DJ heroes?
Oh, gosh. I mean, we grew up with Dick Biondi on WLS radio, Ron Britton. There were Art Roberts. My God, it was like WLS radio and WCFL were the big AM stations, you know, and then of course later on FM became the god. But those AM stations, especially WLS and WCFL, they were big supporters of all the local bands out of Chicago. They were more than happy to showcase our demos and our records that we were releasing at the time. And Dick Biondi played a big part. Dick used to always, he's still on the air now on WLS FM, which is great. He sounds like the same guy. He's an amazing DJ. We would bring our records to the station and sit there for hours, you know, and then the program directors wouldn't let you add any songs. So about 3 minutes before midnight, he would take our single and he would play it because the program director couldn't get in the room fast enough to shut him down. So he would before the midnight hour hit, he would showcase one of the Chicago local bands' new records and get us out there. WLS has 50,000 watts, and it went to like 4 or 5 states. So he was a big part of making all of us happen.
Actually, I used to sit as a kid in my bedroom at night and pick up WLS on my AM radio when I go after WABC in New York, and we had Wibbage in Philadelphia, and of course all those great stations. Who influenced you to go into music?
Well, my father was a musician. He played saxophone, violin, and sang. He had a small band just prior to me coming into the world. Matter of fact, I think the last time I saw him play in his band was I was about 5 years old. And then he pretty much let go of the music to support the family and go to work full time. But I grew up with a lot of 78 records being played in the house. A lot of great big band and vocalist standards, Rosemary Clooney, you know, Sinatra, all those people. It was just amazing to be surrounded by music. And so and you know, Chicago, we back in the early '60s, we were all into ballrooms and dancing. And, you know, dance music was big. R&B music in Chicago was a big dance thing. And we used to go to a place called Holiday Ballroom all the time and dance when we were like 16. You know, we would dress up in suits and ties and go in there and dance and, you know, meet girls and just have a great time. And Holiday Ballroom also had live music. So in between the DJ spinning records, we'd have a live band that would come up and blow your socks off. And eventually, a bunch of us that became the Buckinghams, we started playing at the Holiday Ballroom. So it was a full circle for us to go from dancing and being in the audience to then getting up on the stage, and then that was kind of our launching pad, the Holiday Ballroom. So yeah, music was always a big part. You know, me growing up as a kid and then getting into high school. Of course, the Beatles came out while I was in high school, so that you know, topped us all off. We all, especially for us singers, because the band that our drummer John Polis came up to me and this other singer George Legros and said, "Look, I've seen you guys sing in the a cappella group you're in and stuff, and I'm in a band that can't sing at all. They can hardly play. Would you guys be the singers in our band?" So that's how we became singers in the band.
Now, I'd like to know, we know the Buckinghams, but will there be a Pulsations reunion?
You know, the Pulsations was the original name of the band. You know, back in the '60s, in order to get work, you had to have, everybody had names that were kind of like lively names, something that had some action involved in it, And so Pulsations was cool, and we actually, our little logo was actually, the letters were kind of dancing, pulsating. And we used to play a lot of drag strips and a lot of car shows and a lot of stuff, wherever they would let us set up, basically. But the Pulsations was the name of the band until we won a Battle of the Bands on WGN-TV and did this TV show called All Time Hits. We were the rock and roll portion of the show, and there was about 7 or 8 different singers on it. Some legitimate stage singers, and then some pop singers and standard singers. Billy Williams, who did "I'm Going to Sit Right Down and Write Myself a Letter," was on the show. There was an amazing group of singers, but we were the rock act. And they asked us before the show aired, before we started taping, and we did live performances on tape. And they asked us if we would change our name to something a little bit more English sounding because of the British invasion. This was 1965. And, we were a local band, so the name really wasn't that, precious to us. So we said, sure, we'll think about it. Well, the next day, a security guard, who, especially for 1965, had a suspiciously long hair under his uniform and stuff. And he came up to us and said, I heard what they asked you. Here's a list of names I thought of. And we went down the list, and the Buckinghams jumped off the list because it not only related to an English sound, but in Chicago we have a very famous fountain called Buckingham Fountain. And it's on the lake shore. It's a beautiful, beautiful, multicolored fountain that goes off every night. It's beautiful. So we thought there's a great connection. Not only is it English sounding, but it connects us to Chicago. So we chose Buckinghams, and that's how Buckinghams was born, right in the middle of that TV show.
I thought you were British. I mean, honestly,
yeah, a lot of people did. Actually, it really got heavy when we did the Smothers Brothers show. And the Smothers brother, Tommy, came out to greet us, and we said, oh, it's great to be here. We're big fans. And he said, wait a second, you guys don't have accents. And we said, yeah, we have Chicago accents. And he said, well, we thought you were English because the set is all Union Jacks. And he said, we're going to have to change this. And that was the day of taping, So we said, no, that's ridiculous. Just leave it up because we had 2 songs to do, and there was different sets for each song, so we were fine. But the problem is that they don't interview you on those shows. You just perform. So nobody ever heard us talk. And when they saw on the Smothers Brothers us backed up by solid Union Jack flags, everybody thought we were English after that. So I guess it was fine. I mean, people, accepted us as being English, and when they heard us speak, they went, wait a second. So it was kind of fun to have that little fantasy going on at the same time. I mean, I was a big Beatles fan. We all were. So, everybody wanted to be the Beatles at the time. So it was kind of flattering.
1967, for a band to be one of the top-selling bands of that year with everything that was going on in this country is a testimonial to, of course, the songwriting and the performing of the Buckinghams. So that was huge. Do you think about it today, and what did it mean to you? Do you remember what it meant to you back in 67?
Well, it really does hit home today because people, when I do shows now, people come up to me after the shows and they have, 40-some years of stories connected to the music. So the impact that we had, because we used to think back then, it's less than 3 minutes that they're playing something you did on the radio, and how does that affect somebody? And they kept us pretty busy for 67 and 68, having to put out all those singles all one after another, and we were on the road all the time and doing all kinds of work, and plus jumping off the road and recording. So we were pretty busy all the time, so we didn't really get the full effect of what was going on. But it was an amazing time because music was changing so much. And, that was one of the best parts of being in the business at that time, is that every 6 months, another new band came out with another extra sound and another disc. It was just wonderful to be in that milieu and constantly rolling around with different acts, One of the first concerts we did in Chicago with a bunch of other local acts opening the show at the McCormick Place. The headliners were the Yardbirds.
Wow.
The undercard from the Yardbirds was the Turtles and the Lovin' Spoonful. And then
Wow.
and so we got to open the show with like 3 other acts from Chicago, and then we all sat there in the pit, and all of a sudden, coming out of the pit was the Yardbirds with Jeff Beck playing guitar.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was like pretty amazing for us that was our entrance into the big time, and so it was very exciting times, really was.
After the Buckingham split, you toured with Cheech and Chong, composed with Tom Scott. You and Mindy Sterling sung the original theme of Family Ties, and so much more. Tell us a little bit about this part of your life.
Well, it was, when the band disbanded in 1970, we had a lot of, problems with management and things like that. Typical kind of 1960s band story. I mean, there's plenty of books out there that we could just replace names and they'd be the same story. So we broke up in 1970 just to kind of keep ourselves sane, because it was very difficult. The last year and a half of our career was litigation and hearings and trying to get our money and all that. So we decided to just instead, because we started to go a little bit crazy, and we said let's just disband the band and just stop it right now, because it can't we can't go any further. And then I started writing a lot, and Carl Gianmarici, the guitar player in the band, started writing, and we got together about a year after the band broke up, and we started trading songs back and forth and playing and doing some gigs, just the 2 of us on acoustic guitar, and we saw that we complemented each other on our writing and our harmonies, so we're a nice blend. And we had known each other from the band before, so we figured we'd get together, and we did some demos. Actually, Poco, Jack Richardson, the guy who produced the Guess Who, sent one of his producers down to do our demo, and Poco happened to be in Chicago recording, so they were on our demo, and we sent the demo to every record company, understanding that we had just been maybe a year away from being the Buckinghams, and we were turned down by every label. And we were like pretty depressed about that. We're going, my gosh, what do you need? What kind of a track record do you need here? And so we, John Polis, who was the drummer in the Buckinghams, and he actually the leader and the guy who started the band, he became went into management after the band broke up and was managing Carl and I. And he said, I got one last idea. He says, because this is great stuff and we've got to get it to someone. So he sent it to Lou Adler on Old Records. And Lou Adler immediately called back and said, I really love this demo, but I'd like to fly you guys out here to do a live audition, and we'll talk about, if you can be on the label or not. So we did that, and we did the live audition. They hooked us up in Studio B at A&M Records. We recorded the whole audition, about 15 songs, and the very next day he said, not only do I want to sign you to the label, but I want to produce your first album.
Nice.
So that was a really nice thing. And then we did a couple albums with Lou till about 1976, and then it just wore itself a little thin. It wasn't a good way to make a living, and I decided to go solo. And that's when I actually walked away from music for a little while and started acting and started doing theater and commercials and some film and things out here, and started an improvisational voice acting group. We did a lot of voices on films and TV shows. And during that period, Tom Scott, I was working with, he was doing demos with me, and he actually called me to come in audition for the Olivia Newton-John tour. And because they had a singer, there were 2 girls and a guy, and the guy was a really good singer, good studio singer, but he couldn't do the duets with her. He couldn't act. He couldn't relate to her. So he called me, and I went in and auditioned with Olivia with the song Suddenly. And I did the audition, and sure enough, Kenny Ortega, who's her choreographer-director, came up to me and said, that was it. He says, you and Olivia look like a perfect couple, and boom, I got that job. And so, and that was a great show. That was the best musicians with Tom Scott as a musical director, and Olivia was a joy to work with. And
of course, the LA Express was amazing.
Yeah, the LA Express, and he was. What was happening there during the rehearsals of the Olivia tour, which lasted about 10 days, he approached me and said, "Look," he said, "I've got this theme song for this new TV show that's not out yet." He said, "I wonder if," he said, "I think you'd be perfect for it." So we just went across the lot to Paramount and walked into the studio, and there was this lovely lady, Mindy Sterling, a great singer, and we did the theme song for Family Ties, the first 13 episodes. And so that was a great thing to do. And I just started to find that I could mix the singing and the acting and still keep my keep my head about me and stay in shape. Because I was really grateful to have a decent voice, and I didn't. And I think that going into the theater helped me continue to keep my voice. Because you have to make sure that you can be heard. So I think that served me well to have those few years of doing that. And then coming back to music was tough because what does a singer do when he's past 30? You can't wear spandex anymore. And so I discovered the music of Bobby Darin.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that brings us basically to today. You're still touring. You're out there. You're either with a group. You're touring, I think, with the Toys and 1910 Fruit Gum Company and Herman's Hermits and everybody.
Oh, yeah.
But then your show is actually the music of the Buckinghams that people know and the music of Bobby Darin. Were you a fan?
Oh yeah, I was a big fan. I used to hear him as I say on stage. I was inspired by Bobby Darin because I was in the back seat of a '56 Chevy and his songs used to come on. And I always say I was doing biology homework, and Dream Splish Splash. I mean, one of the things that really got me about Bobby Darin, which really hit me young when I was young, is Dick Clark used to have that the Beechnut Spearmint Gum show, which was the not the bandstand show, but the kind of stage show with everybody in the audience. And all the singers were on, Frankie Avalon, Bobby Rydell, Paul Anka. They were all up in suits and ties, and they're all young kids, but dressed up. We all dressed up then. And then Bobby Darin came on doing Splish Splash, and the curtain opened, and he was in a cardboard cutout bathtub with no shirt and a back brush, and he was singing Splish Splash while he was doing this bath bit. And I just cracked up. I went, "This is not only great as a singer, but he's got a sense of humor." So it stuck with me. He had a sense of humor. The other guys seemed overly serious. So I really started following him and listening to what he did. So yeah, full circle for a singer. When I looked at the Bobby Darin songbook and saw what he had done, and plus his whole approach to music was innovative, and he never covered a song just to cover it. He always made it authentic in some way. So, and his choice of material is so eclectic, and everything he did seemed to land. From Splish Splash to Queen of the Hop to If I Were a Carpenter to Simple Song of Freedom to Matt the Knife. All those. I mean, everything he did was so all over the place, but he did it with genuine respect for the genre, and that really got me as a singer. And I said, this is a joy for any singer. So I started delving into all of his music and found songs that I could relate to that all fit together in a chronological way, in a timeline, that also included the Buckingham hits, because I start by saying I was inspired to become a singer by his music, which then got me into a band. And then near the end of the Bobby Darin show, because we do it straight through all the years, the rock and roll, into the standards, the pop, the folk, the blues, and then back into the Las Vegas. We closed with kind of the Las Vegas years. And in that period, Bobby Darin got sick again around 67, 68 and had to take time off. And that's when the inspiration came full circle, because then our records came out. So I insert them into the show as part of that, and then we finish up with a bunch of another 3 or 4 Bobby Darin songs. It's a really good show, and I'm really pleased because the response from the audience is great. They always say that our music fits right in with Bobby Darin stuff, and also we don't hear a lot of Bobby Darin music all the time. So I think bringing it to people and explaining some of the reasons that the songs were done and what he did is almost like a little musical documentary.
And you can see, Dennis, because He plays everywhere all year, and it's easy. DTSings.com, DTSings.com for everything. Dennis Tufano, the tours with the 60s bands, his personal tour. Everything is at DT Sings. There you can hook up with Facebook and Twitter and get everything Dennis Tufano. Dennis, I really appreciate you spending a few minutes on the Marc Berman Show.
Oh, Mark, it's a pleasure, man. I really appreciate the fact that you have such respect for the music of that period and our band. And I'm proud that I was in that band, and I'm really happy and grateful that I'm still able at this time to go out there and perform to the people. And I really do love, like I said earlier, listening to people's stories about the music, because it really makes it all worthwhile that we had something to do and offer people. You know?
And for me, to have somebody like you on my show, when I look at that red label that says Columbia, and it's got your songs on it, and it's in my collection, well, we grew up together. We just didn't know each other.
Yeah.
And so, Dennis, I want to thank you. If you hold the line, I'm going to talk to you off air.
You got it.
To my listeners, check this out.